What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the Valspar Championship. Really cool tournament this week. We've got Tiger Woods in the field. We've got the stars aligning for the defending champion, making me wonder if it's Kismet. It's Kismet, babe. And just a really fun tournament here at the start of March. So let's talk about this. So this is going to be the Innisbrook Resort. It is a 7,300 yard par 71 with a few devastating par fours on this course. So 16 and 18 are two par fours at the end of the round. That's the stretch of holes they would consider the snake pit, which is what you'll hear this week. Really difficult. So when we get to our tour stats and our correlation, there's going to be a lot of par 4 stuff in there because, well, we'll save that. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into it. This is the cheat sheet for this week's Valspar Championship. If you've never seen the video series before, it's available on dfsondemand.com. All right, let's talk about this. So a lot of interesting names above 5,000 here. We've got Jordan Spieth leading the way at 11,800, 8-1. By Jordan Spieth's standards, he's not been very good recently. By any other golfer on the face of the earth, he's been pretty good. You can see 5 top 20s in his last 6 starts, including 2 top 10s. He just hasn't really found it. He hasn't put 4 rounds together yet. There's a stat in the tour stats here. He's actually one of the best weekend players. If you want to save him for a weekend round or a weekend contest, I think that's fair. 11,800. I'm a big believer that he's going to snap off and find it here soon, and he's a defending champion. So I'm cool if you want to go out and roster Jordan Spieth here. If you want to save him for the weekend, I'm also fine with that. I think it's a little bit contrarian. I wouldn't lock him into a cash game at this point, but Spieth is still certainly a viable option. I really believe he's too good to not pop off and win here shortly. Above 10,000, I think the most interesting guy is probably Henrik Stenson, right? We've not seen him play in a while. He hasn't played on the PGA Tour. Well, I'll pull it up in a second, or I'll pull it up right now. Let's pull up his game logs. So Stenson has not played on the PGA Tour since October. No, I'm sorry. Really, that's kind of a Euro event too, that WGC. So let's call it September 17th, the BMW Championship, last year's playoffs. Stenson has not played on tour. Stenson's really interesting because it seems like in the fantasy world, he's gotten a bad rap as of late. Do you remember when he missed, it's right here, he missed 3 cuts in a row, and he missed 4 out of like 7 cuts. It was unheard of at the time. He was very popular going into a lot of these events. He burned a lot of people, so I think he's left a bad taste in a lot of DFS players' minds. Since then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 straight made cuts, including a win at the Wyndham, a second place there in a WGC event. You know, he's played at the Euro Tour. He played 3 times this calendar year. He's got 2 top 8 finishes. So I'm cool with rostering him. I'll actually probably have a ton of Henrik Stenson here. He's 20-1 to win the event, and he's got great course history. The last 3 times he's teed it up here at the Copperhead course, it's a 7th, an 11th, and a 4th. So really wondering what the industry is going to do on him. I will be in on Henrik Stenson. Moving along here, Rose, I think, will be just fine. Tiger Woods, I guess we should talk about it a little bit. What I'm willing to do is roster Tiger in weeks where driving accuracy doesn't matter, right? Where you're not going to get penalized for hitting it way right. It's clear that he has not figured out the driver. However, he's been unbelievable with his irons. Proximity, I think the last time he teed it up at the Honda, I think he was number 1 in the field. That's a stat you guys probably all saw. Getting around the green, playing well around the greens. So Tiger's a guy that I'm getting a lot more comfortable with. on a week-by-week basis. Although this week I imagine he's going to be pretty popular after a 12th place finish. So if you want to fade him, I think that's reasonable because we saw his ownership drop week after week since his debut. I think last time he teed it up at the Honda, it was the lowest ownership he had, and he had the best result. So now you're going to get a lot of these guys who are flipping the script and saying, okay, now I got to jump back on Tiger. So when there's a mass movement of ownership like that, I prefer to go in the opposite direction. We did it with Terrell Hatton last week where everyone got off, we got on. This week, I assume everyone is getting on Tiger. We'll get off for contrarian purposes, or at least I will, but I'm still comfortable playing him. It's kind of like an ownership issue at this point. Moving along here. So I mentioned the defending champ, Adam Hadwin. We talked about him last week because we said he was a GPP play where he's popped off a couple of times in his last couple starts. He actually made it into my single entry lineup and backed up with a 9th place at the WGC. Pretty good value for $8,800 considering he's 30-1 to win, which is better than some guys who are more expensive, and he's your defending champion. So really putting it together here recently, and now he goes back to a course where obviously there's plenty of good vibes. So Hadwin will be popular. I understand that, but for very good reason. All right, we're going to talk about a couple of some of these other guys on other tabs here, but I want to see if there's anyone else that I want to point out before I move on from this cheat sheet. I'll just scroll through kind of slow so you guys can see. Kevin Na, I think, is worth a bullet or two. Second place finish in his last start. Back-to-back top 20s. And he's got, outside of last year, three decent finishes in a row, 22nd, 10th, and second place finish here. So Kevin Na jumped off my screen a little bit. And then I think someone like this, Charles Schwartzel, who is $7,500, hasn't been spectacular recently, but defending champ 2 years ago and backed it up with a 6th place. Charles Schwartzel is about as consistent as it gets on tour. So his last miscut was the U.S. Open last year, June 18th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 straight made cuts. My only concern with Schwartzel is I don't know what his upside is. I don't think it's that great. He did win here before, so we know that. So let's see this. Let me see if I can do this. I haven't done this yet, so this is just a hunch. Okay. Let's just look at his PGA Tour starts. Yeah. All right, cool. This is what I kind of wanted to see. So this is every PGA Tour start for Charles Schwartzel since 2008. One win, it's here. And one of his other best finishes, a 6th place, also here. So basically, here's the point. I don't think Charles Schwartzel has a ton of upside outside of like a top 25. He's pretty cheap. He's a pretty safe bet for a top 25 in most weeks. But if there's ever going to be a week for upside, this appears to be it. 2 of his best, 10 finishes on the PGA Tour in the last decade have been here. It's the only place he's won. So if we're ever trying to tap into that Charles Schwartzel upside, it has to be right now. Okay, that's probably it for the cheat sheet. We'll move on to some other tabs here, but I'll try to see if anybody else pops off. William McGirt has played, I guess, decent in his last couple starts, but brutal course history here. Oh, Dominic Bozelli, 2 straight top 25s and a 3rd place last year. We'll see him on another tab as well, but $7,100, that's pretty good. That's probably it, right? That's probably it for the cheat sheets. Yeah, okay. So let's flip to a couple other tabs here. Let's go to course history next. And you'll see, this is where you'll see Bozelli because he's kind of, he skews this because he only has 1 start and he scored 90 DraftKings points, so he's the top of the list. Here's Jordan Spieth, who, no surprise, Henrik Stenson's here. Is there anyone that we're not recognizing that, Sergio's on here? Hadwin. I mean, there's not really any names that are kind of surprising with large sample sizes, right? Duffner's been pretty good here. This is very much a second shot course, it appears. Strokes gained approach, when we get to that section, plays a very large role in correlation to DraftKings points this week. So guys who are ball strikers, second shot type players like a Jason Duffner seem to play really well here, and that's getting backed up by Duffner's really good success in 8 years. He only has one top 10, but he's never been outside the top 30. So that's pretty good. I'd roster a lot of Duffner this week. Flip to the PGA Tour stats. Now, I've filtered this. If you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, I'm only going since the start of the calendar year. So January 1st, 2018 to current, or last week, essentially. So here are the tournaments. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's only the PGA Tour. If I wanted to, I could do the Euro Tour as well. Not sure how necessary that is, but while I have it up here, Henrik Stenson leads the way. But let's just go back to just the PGA Tour. So what do we see? A couple of interesting things. Ches Reavie continues to pop up. He had like back-to-back second-place finishes. Here's Adam Hadwin. Okay, he's been awesome. Duffner's on here again. Here's Tony Finau. Finau's going to pop up a lot on our correlated stats. I love Tony Finau almost every week, but this week makes a lot of sense too. Coming off a 5th place finish, and he still was. I can't remember if he was up there on the total course stats model that I just had up there, but a 5th place last year worth 88 DraftKings points. Like, Tony makes so many birdies that if him and someone else finish in the same position, he's very likely going to outscore them significantly because of how many birdies he makes. So, and potential for eagles too, of course, right, with Tony Finau. So he's always a very interesting player in this scoring format, and he's been awesome recently, as you can see here. Kevin Na kind of up here too, right? So there's some interesting names. And let's go to our correlation stats here. So if you've never seen me do this, what you're looking at is I've taken the last 8 years of PGA Tour stats and the last 8 years of DraftKings results, ran a regression model, and you see which stats correlate for each course. A lot of them are the same. What we've noticed so far this year is like scoring average is always up there. Strokes gained total is always up there, of course, right? Like, that's obvious. I've tried to just give you like the next set, the next set of stats that are relevant. So that's what you're seeing here. So the 4 stats that were the most relevant for Innisbrook were SFDA, which is this cool little, kind of like it's a field differential stat. It's per round. Basically takes into account the strength of the field. This is a really interesting stat because it compares literally people who played in that same round with you, same conditions, all that stuff. Justin Rose, number 1. Here's Tony Finau, number 3, right? Finau's $9,400. Chesson Hadley, another guy who I think will be, or should be pretty popular for only $7,400. We've seen him near the top of leaderboards early this year, and he drops down to $7,400. I think it's because it was a miscut last time he teed it up. Strokes gained approach, this was a really important one. So this was, I believe, the 2nd or 3rd biggest correlator to success this at the Copperhead course. So strokes gained approach I'm taking very seriously. So that's when I said, this is kind of a second shot course. What you're seeing on here is a lot of ball strikers, right? You're seeing Adam Scott. You're seeing Keegan, who's played well this year. You're seeing Zach Johnson. Some of these are no surprise, but then you get Tony Finau again. I'm actually shocked to not see Duffner on here because he's notoriously a second shot player, but I guess not. What is happening here? Sorry. I guess not with strokes gained so far this year. Very interesting. And then the last 2 are always important for DraftKings scoring, but let's talk about birdie or better. Always important for DraftKings scoring. So again, you see Chesson Hadley. Paul Casey keeps popping up on these. He might have to make his way into some of our lineups. Justin Rose up there. But I don't like Justin Rose losing a half a stroke in approach, but you can't deny the fact that he's an awesome player, right? We talked about him a couple weeks ago. But here's what was the other big one. Along with strokes gained approach, par 4 birdie or better was so important here, and it's probably because of how difficult these par 4s are and the fact that there's one extra. So put those two hand in hand. Success on par 4s is going to be necessary to win this week. Justin Rose pops up again. So Rosie here is interesting. He is essentially the number one guy in 3 of these stats, and he loses ground in one that I think is the most important. So what are we going to do? He doesn't have a huge sample size, so any one of these stats we can kind of write off as just being skewed and volatile and whatever. I think he's really interesting. Maybe he and Stenson kind of go overlooked in the 10,000 range with Rory there. Also, maybe Spieth goes underowned too because he's been a little underwhelming so far. It's only Monday. I'd love to know what the ownership of these guys is going to be. Stenson and Rose were probably my 2 favorites. I like Spieth for what he is, which is kind of like this likely underowned GPP flyer. So those are the guys I'm going to build my rosters around. But this par 4 scoring stat is so interesting. There's a lot of names you wouldn't expect up here, right? It's like Ryan Palmer, Wee Kim, Zach Johnson kind of makes a lot of sense because he's such a good ball striker, but a lot of interesting names. So I think this is where you can find some value. You know, a couple of these cheap guys who play par 4s really, really well, maybe this is their opportunity to feast. So find a player whose par 4 is trending, as well as maybe like recent form or something like that. If you can't find any good course history, that seems like a good strategy to take. And then let's wrap this up with what we do every week, which is just to look at the Vegas odds here. Excuse me. And we'll see if we can find any more values. So let's see Justin Rose. Justin Rose 18-1, which is better odds than Stenson. He's $200 less expensive. Adam Hadwin 30-1 is cheaper than Gary Woodland, who has worse odds and is more expensive. Ryan Moore, who's more expensive. Ches Reavie seems like a bargain in this section of players. So his peers here, 2 guys who are 40-1 or under 8,000. It's Luke List and it's Ches Reavie. Luke List has played better recently. Reavie has had, go back and watch every video from the last year. I've talked about Reavie every single week. An extended run, including 2 second place finishes in his last 4 starts, and 2 top 25s here in his last 2 starts. That seems like a really good bargain in that price range, or in that odds range, I guess I should say. 50-1, Streelman seems to be a good value. Duffner as well. Cam Smith, Brandon Grace, and Matt Fitzpatrick, who are all somewhat interesting. Cam Smith popped up a lot on the stats page. All more expensive with the same odds to win this. Charlie Hoffman's in here. He played well in stretches last week. Finished in 20th, faded a little bit, but 61 and $7,300 is pretty cheap for him. And it doesn't look like there's any other significant outliers here as we go down. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, so there you go. That's the preview for the Valspar Championship. Let me know who you're going to play. I kind of like going through that in odds tiers here. So this 40-1 tier is pretty interesting. So Reavie identified as probably a really good value, but there's like 8 to 10 guys here. So who are you playing out of this 40-1 range? I'd be interested to hear because it spreads out from basically $1,300 worth of salary. So let me know who you're playing there. Tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon. Later.